Well, let's say welcome to episode 16, Pardo.
Wow, 16. What was the week that it's just gone in games? Week 13? That always confuses me.
Yeah, because we're on episode 16, but it's actually
13 just gone,
yes,
but we're now in week 14 of upcoming fixtures.
yeah.
And it even confuses me even more because I still insist on putting, when I'm doing my notes, I've got episode 12 because that's the 12th episode I'm in.
I have a confession to make for this to start this episode 16.
Mhm.
I was thinking a lot about it this week, and I hate the Browns. I hate the Cleveland Browns.
What are you going to do then? Are you going to change your team?
Well,
I
you
suppose
know,
this is a question that I was thinking today on,
mhm,
because I suppose similar to you, I mean, first episode in, I made a bit of a
with
sweeping, off the cuff decision to kind of follow the Lions.
yeah.
I'm not saying I'm deviating from that, but maybe upon reflection, I might have made a different choice.
You want to
Um,
be there postseason, don't you? Let's not lie. You want to be, you want to be there, hoping to get this Super Bowl. There's no chance with the
no,
Lions.
I
There's
mean,
no chance for
I
the
mean
next few years.
that's the shame, isn't it? Like the season's over, but then like I just can't. I mean, I'm on Twitter and like there's people like saying, "Oh well, this is it now. I know Stafford's back, but don't play him because we want to make sure we get the first pick." And I'm like, "What?
Oh
Yeah,
God.
yeah,
Yeah.
what is going
Really?
on?
Do you
This is
want?
ridiculous."
Is that what you want to look forward to? First pick of the draft. I mean, come on. What will probably happen is the teams that are badly run. Usually the teams that are like this and have the first pick of the draft are very badly run at the moment. So then you would even pick badly. And then you spend the next 4 months just being annoyed because they picked the wrong player. And then what happens? I mean, come on. You
And
want to
then
see
you
people play good football.
exactly, and you got like, I mean, Stafford is an institution, and I mean, this might be his last season as well. Who knows?
Think it's the injuries piling up, right? Like
Mm,
it's because he seems this hip problem that he's had a couple of seasons in a row. He missed the end of the last season as well, and then he seems to have this weird hip problem. And I think he's probably taken such a beating over the last sort of I don't know 8 9 seasons he's in the NFL, and he relies on. He's not the most mobile guy, right? So he relies on throwing it far, and I think maybe his body's can't take it anymore. Philip Rivers is the same way as well. That
mm.
guy is he doesn't seem to be able to play anymore as well, but he's a lot older than Stafford. I think Stafford is only 30. Philip Rivers is like 37 or something. Oh, but yeah, I just
Mm.
thought to myself this week, I mean, maybe we should have a think about new teams, to be honest, Potter. I hate to be a glory supporter, but, I found it hard initially to look past that poo brown colored
Well,
jersey. That was always difficult. Looking at this jersey is not nice, right? This
mm,
brown color all the time.
yeah, and I get where you're coming from, and I suppose
Mm,
what we can do, um, and it's leading on to the question of who would you pick if you could
mm,
pick, but
mm,
maybe when it comes to the playoff time, we each have a playoff team alongside
mm.
Internet Resol. We put our chips on the table and we're all in. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe, we kind of almost have our selections and choose I don't know, of all the teams and we just take
Mm.
out the hat and that's who you're rooting
I think you're
for
right.
the
I think yeah,
remainder.
let's do that. Let's do that. And it gives, but I just don't think I can support the Browns going into next season. I've tried to look past this poo-colored jersey. I really tried. I watched Draft Day 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
I really tried, and it's just I think what it comes down to is I just really dislike them. Probably because I follow too many of the fans on Twitter. They also annoy me a bit. And then and then it's this whole culture around the team. Like, Freddie
Mm.
Kitchens, the head coach. I think he's just a bit like he has no idea what he's doing and he's lost control of all these players and the thing. Like he was wearing this t-shirt this week that said something like Pittsburgh started it. or something, because
Oh,
of
I
the
heard
helmet
about
game.
that.
But
Yeah.
it's just a bit embarrassing. Like your head coach, like who needs to bring a bit of discipline, bring a bit of order, and a bit of like set the kind of tone for how like they're gonna play and gonna be. Then like I mean, okay, it's a bit of fun, but would be a bit of fun if they were a really great team winning a lot. But they're kind of all over the place. They're losing.
Are you
They're playing terribly,
are you preempting
and
this because you know the Browns are playing the Bengals this week?
ooh, oh,
And
wow.
you
And the
know the
Bengals
Bengals,
won.
yeah, they're on a bit of a winning streak of one game.
Yeah.
Took a while for the power of the travel to kind of kick in, but it got
I
there.
was gonna say it was like a late bounce from the travel. Do you think
Yeah,
that's what it was? It must
maybe.
be.
And the Browns got with the Bengals winning, and also Washington. Even though we didn't get to even talk about
Mm,
Washington last week, they bagged a win as well, away from home,
yeah.
which is quite something, really. Um, but
I'm
yeah, I mean,
wondering whether I'm wondering whether because Andy Dalton came back into the team for the Bengals at quarterback, and I'm wondering whether Andy Dalton saw that the travel segment was killed last week because the Bengals lost the week after the travel, and maybe he was inspired to win that game
I've got a
for
bit
the
of a,
travel segment.
I think so. Well, I've really got a bit of a soft spot for the Bengals. Maybe,
Why?
at the moment, I don't
Because of the
know.
tiger helmets.
I hated them because of the tiger helmets initially. I thought they looked so tacky. But now, you give a team a bit of focus and, you can't help but, be endeared to them sometimes. And like Bengals are
Mm,
one of those, you kind of have a bit of focus with some and you get put off even more, I suppose.
mm,
But yeah, I think the Bengals, but I don't know, like if I was going to choose, I mean, there's some really nice teams that, I mean, as per our first pod, 49ers, the
mm.
Bills, they kind of continue to be, quite slick teams. I like the look of the Seahawks, the Vikings. They had a cracking game, didn't they?
Yeah,
Last
it was a
weekend.
very good game. No,
Uh,
last night that was the
was
Seahawks
it
versus
last?
the
Yeah, it's
Vikings.
only last
Monday
night.
night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unbelievable. But yeah, I think it was. I mean, with the little I was able to watch, I thought some great results. Uh,
Mhm.
Texans beating the Patriots. Um,
I
that
just
sport.
don't understand that game actually. I was watching that one. I was looking at the highlights and I don't understand really how they lost that game. I was quite interested. It seemed like the Texans were very kind of well, I do understand how they lost it. I think they had a bad basically Tom Brady's completion percentage was like 51% or something like that.
Bloody
Yeah,
hell.
51%. So he had 47 pass attempts and completed 24. As a team, they threw and ran for 448 yards, the Patriots, and the
Yeah.
Texans only 276 yards, but they seem to be much more effective with the ball, the Texans.
Mm.
And yeah, and in the game, I was watching some of the highlights again just before we came on air, and there was a few turnovers and things like this, but then they got called back, so they didn't actually count as turnovers. But it seemed that the Texans were able to kind of like get in Tom Brady's face a bit, and the secondary, right? So when he throws
Yeah.
the ball to his wide receivers, he did. I think the thing is he doesn't have people he can throw the ball to, Tom Brady. So this is how they lost. But and the Texans were quite methodical. They scored 7 points in every quarter. So it was a weird game, I thought. A
Mm.
very weird game.
Patriots got City Chiefs this
Oh,
week.
the City Chiefs. Well,
It's
it's a good time to play the Patriots.
mm, I'm just kind of well, all right. Well, I'm just looking at their league because they're running away with it at one stage. But
Yeah.
the Bills are right on their heels.
Hmm.
I think if they, well, all right, Bills have got the Ravens as well at home. So I
Tough
think
one.
it could either be, all out Patriots for the division, or,
Mhm.
the Bills could really kind of make it very difficult because, well, actually, they'll always be the second best team looking at everyone else because, like, yeah, everyone else is kind of just like the Chiefs have kind of kept in there because of the Raiders, Broncos, and Chargers just being so rubbish in AFC West and AFC South. Like Texans are out there, but they've lost 4 games with Titans, Colts, and Jaguars. Just yeah, what's happened to the Jaguars? But I did hear Minshew is starting the next game for the
Yeah,
Jags.
he
He's
ca
back in.
so
He's back in.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. The Jaguars have fell off a cliff, and Foles just hasn't been able to get that offense moving at all. And then they benched him in the last game and brought in Minshew again. They're just they look dead in the water.
I
Yeah,
heard rumors that they're like falling out in the changing rooms. There's kind of
really.
infighting after the game last weekend. Not
That's
sounding good for
another
the Jags.
that is another team who's very indisciplined, right? So
Mm.
also as with the Browns, they have a very they kind of have an indisciplined team or a lack of discipline there, and the Jags are a team that always fall out. So they're at the start of the season they lost a few games, and then you saw Jalen Ramsey, who was now traded to the LA Rams. You saw him like almost have a fight with Doug Marrone, the head coach, on the sidelines, and there were players like there were players like sort of shouting at the coach, and they've been well known for their infighting. Last season, it all
Mm.
ended in disaster for them as well because they again had like total infighting. They have some hotheads, I think, in that dressing room, and
Yeah.
then I think they have a head coach that no one really respects anymore. And now they've basically, and I think they were kind of started to get a bit going with Minshew. Then Foles came in, it's not working. I think the whole thing is not very well. What would you say? I think the culture kind of sucks there a bit, and it makes sense when you see who the team is run by, right? So the team
Mm.
is run by the Khan family, who also owned Fulham Football Club in the
Bloody
UK.
hell.
And
Right.
how is Fulham run? It's a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. Where? Well, they're now in the Championship, aren't they now in the English leagues?
And that was a bit of a disaster when they've kind of come up to the Premier League, and then but it was kind of again a rotten culture, right? Yeah. So but it's good to see Minshew back. I'll be happy to see Minshew back because Foles has done absolutely nothing since he came back in,
Seem pointless.
which is sad.
Yeah, and they built a quite a a new fan base through the Minshew effect this season, and anything good about them is through him. And I think there's definite issues with the defense when they are losing by more than 10 points each game on average. The last
Mhm. Yeah.
3 or 4 weeks.
We were even excited about them even coming to London, right?
Mm.
Because of Minshew. And I think you're paying Foles a lot of money, and he's obviously not. This is a tough situation for him to come back into after injured. It doesn't seem like a good place. It's a bit of a dressing room unrest, as you said. It's
Mm.
a difficult situation for him. I bet he wishes he was back in Philadelphia now. And I bet Philadelphia wish they had him as backup to Carson Wentz because that's also not working well for Philadelphia. And it seems a bit of a disaster. But going back to the Jaguars, they have the Chargers this week coming up at home. So, and the Chargers are also awful at the moment. I mean, they have a 4-8
Mm.
record. I would, if Minshew is back in the team for the Jaguars, I'm tempted to pick the Jaguars there. Actually, I would pick the Jaguars there.
Should be an interesting week for predictions, actually. I mean, yeah, personal preference is Jags over Chargers anyway, and they're at home. And yeah, like you say, they're balanced teams, so the home team kind of gets um, yeah, the benefit of the doubt, I suppose. Oh, Saints 49ers this week, Steve.
Oh,
I
that's a
think
good game.
they're two of my, they're just two classy teams at the moment, I think. Saints and 49ers.
Both on a 10-2 record as well.
10-2. Yeah.
Who are you
And
going for in that game? I would go 49ers, I think.
well, if you're going 49ers as a gentleman's agreement, I'll go Saints. Yeah.
The next gentleman's agreement game, you get to pick first. It is at the
Oh,
difficult thing about that one about 49ers winning that would be that it's at the
well,
Saints, and
that's
they
what's
have
clinched it for me. Yeah.
yeah in their stadium is so loud because it's like in a dome,
Mm.
and the stadium gets so loud with the fans cheering. Sometimes the quarterbacks, they have these headphones in there. They have a little microphone in there or a speaker in their ear that
Yeah.
tells the head coach can talk to them and tell them what play they're going to run next and things like this. But when it's so loud in the dome, quarterbacks say they can't hear anything.
That's
So
interesting, isn't it?
yeah, so it can cause some issues.
Just trying to look at the other games, like if there is need for another gentleman's agreement in terms of would we go for the same teams. And I don't know whether there is something as well balanced as Saints 49ers. Probably the next best would be, well, around the Patriots Chiefs, but Patriots
Go,
are favourite
I go for the
there, clear
Patriots
favourites. And then,
because
well,
you know why? Because it's so cold. I mean, it's cold in Kansas as well. I think
you're not
Kansas
playing.
City. No, but but it's like the Patriots going up to New England where it's usually freaking cold. The teams are just usually not used to that kind of thing.
It must have
Although,
an impact. It must have an impact because you have got teams that train day in day out in warm
yeah,
weather, and they have to go to Cowboys have got to go to the Bears. I bet that's quite a contrast.
yeah,
It's what
exactly.
they're
And
going to be used to.
imagine what it's like with an old quarterback like Tom Brady. Like I
Yeah,
saw him he tried to run in the Texans game and he ran about 10 yards. It took him about a good hour to run 10 yards, I think. And like, he runs
like he's
almost
running
as
on a
slow as me.
travelator. Yeah.
Yeah, he runs almost as slow as me, I think. So I think I might actually be able to beat him in a race. And he's never been known for his speed. So I'm not saying,
No.
okay, he should be fast. But imagine being 42 years old in the cold playing these games. The bones start to hurt a little bit. It doesn't matter who you are and what your diet is. Your bones and you feel that. You
Yeah.
feel that cold.
I suppose well, yeah. So Bills Ravens is
Although
probably
he is used to it, sorry, because he plays for New England, so it
he
kind of
should be.
counteracts
He
what I would
should
say.
be.
He
Yeah,
should.
he should be. He should be. But it doesn't defeat. It's this time of year as well. I think best player's been up till autumn. They've been superb, haven't they? The
Right.
standout team, and
Yeah.
suddenly it's just as it's dropping below 10, maybe those bones are starting to creak a little.
Hey, like it's nice for us. We can watch it on a Sunday, wrapped up in a blanket on our couch. He's out there in the rain, in the wind, in the
Uh,
snow.
I know, I know.
At 42 years old. And like you say, as soon as it starts to drop a little bit lower, those bones start to creak, the cartilage stiffens up. It's hard to get those long legs moving. Um, let's see how
Keep,
long he's got.
yeah, this is it. And yeah, the Bills and Ravens, as I kind of mentioned briefly a number of times now, but I'd like to say, I'd like to say, and if we have to have a gentleman's agreement, then I'd like to see the Bills win that one.
I kind of would. No, I don't think I would actually. I like the Ravens more.
Oh, I've
And
invested in that top now, so yeah.
yeah, exactly. And the Ravens are just fun. It's like good
Mhm.
football to watch. They had a good victory in the last week's week 13 games as well. That was a tough game because that was also talking about weather conditions. That was really wet that game,
Mm.
and they beat the 49ers 20. The 49ers got 17, Ravens
I,
got 20.
I thought that was a very good game actually, and I think it was quite tight. It was kind of like back and forth to a certain degree, and then it kind of remained at 17 all for what seemed
Mm,
like forever.
hmm
And I think there was the first fumble of Lamar Jackson this season happened in that game with a turnover. Didn't account to anything, but then it did get driven all the way to the last kick of the game.
Yeah.
Ended up 2017.
It was that
Uh,
the whole second half, right? It was basically the 49ers in the third quarter, there was 3-0 to the 49ers. And then in the final quarter, that was when Justin Tucker scored that kick.
mm,
And that's what made it 2017 to the Ravens. But the second half of the game was a real tense affair, which
yeah.
was there was only 6 points scored in that.
Well, this is it, and all the other games leading up to that, last 3 or 4 games leading up to it, Ravens have really knocked over teams, including the Patriots.
Mm.
But I think that's how they build that game, because they're both from different sides of, AFC and NFC.
Mm.
They could be the matchup in the Super Bowl. It's like
Ooh.
a Super Bowl preview.
Yeah, yeah, that's what people were saying. Yeah, that would be great. That would be a great game to watch. So I'd be happy. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I'd be
Um,
backing 49ers. You'd be Ravens.
yeah, exactly. That would be
Yeah,
cool.
that'd be a good matchup, that.
Well, then we could choose our real teams from there, right? Like because then we've got to see the full season together as NFLP, and then we could really see who deserves our support from here.
Well,
Um,
my Stafford Lions top's already in the post, so
I think it's okay to like. I actually like when I like a top. I think I'm just gonna order it, or when I like a player, I think I'm just gonna buy one because I
yeah,
think
and
it's nice to have an
it's
eclectic mix.
yeah, it's a good look back. It's a good souvenir from the era.
It's kind of
Uh,
it's nostalgia, right? You look back on it in a few
Absolutely.
years and you'll probably be like, "Who's Lamar Jackson again?" No, I don't think so. I think he will probably win a Super Bowl, will go down in history for some like, I mean, especially if he's the MVP this year and all this.
Mm.
But it will be good to look back in like you'll be clearing out your closet in 10 years and you'll be like, "Oh, do you remember when we did that NFL podcast? And remember when Lamar Jackson got an MVP? That was fun."
I'll be doing that
Uh,
when I pick out my retro NFLP T-shirt.
We need to order some of them for the Christmas party, for the the staff Christmas party.
Yeah, we'll be
I
one of
have
those organizations that have their Christmas due in January. Yeah.
that is cheap. I have a segment for you.
Oh yeah.
So I have a couple of segments. You can get warmed up for this next segment. So I'm going to do a bit of a teaser here for the listeners. So I'm going to challenge you to come up with two segments on the fly. Right.
What?
The first segment that you need to come up with is Pardo's Power Rankings. And I want you to come up with your top 5 teams, best teams in the NFL that you think and why. And you can just do it on the fly.
Yeah.
And then after that, my new segment, Who's Getting Fired in the Morning? And I want you to I want you to look at all the teams where you think this person should be fired, the head coach.
I don't know enough people to kind of come up with individuals that are going to get fired.
No,
Um,
you can just say which teams played terrible football and would you like to see. You don't even need to know the head coach. And while you're thinking of that, do you remember last week when I had the
Gonna put a
memories of the NFL?
countdown clock timer on.
Yeah, I'll give you doo 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 doo. No, I have one segment that I want to put in now, and it's the memories of the NFL segment. You remember I did it last week,
Oh yeah.
and it was my friend Matt who gave some memories of his NFL memories, and he did another one for us this week. So he was watching the Seattle Seahawks game. He was watching them beat the Vikings. We should actually talk about that game. We didn't talk much about it. And he sent me another WhatsApp audio. So I think this segment, I'm going to ask him for one every week, and we can call it Matt's Memories. And I'll play it for you and see if you can hear it, Pardo. But I'll
All
put
right.
it properly into the podcast when I edit it. Here we go.
It's Matthew's Memories. So I'm watching the Seahawks on Monday Night Football, and it made me think about my first football game that I went to. And the first football game I ever went to, I was actually an adult. I didn't go when I was young. And tickets are like super expensive. So the first one I ever went to wasn't until I lived in Seattle, which was, I had like a kid and stuff. I was an adult. And so we went to this game and we took the bus. And on the bus, my friend handed me a 7-Up, like liter bottle of 7-Up. And he said, "Hey, yo, I mixed that with, I think he said Jameson or something." So this is at like 10 in the morning. So we start drinking on the stupid bus all the way into Seattle. It's like pouring rain. And we tailgated some more. And then I finally got into the game. I don't remember who the Seahawks were playing. I don't really remember the game. One thing that did happen that day though is I dropped my mobile phone into a beer and ruined it. And that was my first NFL game.
And there you go. There's
Wow.
Matt's memories of the NFL. Another epic story from Matt. I'm loving I absolutely love these stories because I love it the way he talks about it as well. Like just this.
He's quite straight talking, isn't he? It's kind of like it's almost like it's a non-event, but then when you actually listen to what he's actually saying, it's quite a big deal, isn't it? It's kind of like.
And I can't tell if he's happy or sad. To me, it sounds like he's absolutely miserable. It sounds like he's absolutely miserable that he had to go to an NFL game. And then...
Well, I think like well that's how you'd be, I reckon. Like you go to a game, it's like oh, bloody hell, it's really cold.
Yeah.
Oh, what? You haven't even got any like hot chocolate in the stands. What am I gonna drink? Yeah, it's.
And then the kicker was he dropped his phone in the beer as well. But I think he actually enjoyed himself. But I am really liking these Matt's memories of the NFL. So let's see what he gets inspired by next week when he's watching the NFL and what memory he has to share. Last week we heard about his Super Bowl 86 experience when the Bengals played in the Super Bowl, and his mum bought a TV for his dad that was basically too big for the living room, and all the neighbors came round to watch. And he was annoyed. He sounded annoyed that the neighbors came round and he couldn't get to watch cartoons on the TV or something like that. Absolutely.
It's the reality, isn't it? You know, when you used to get visitors around the house and you're in the middle of a program and your mum wants to kind of save face by not having the TV on while she's entertaining guests, but you're like desperate to watch the end of, back in the day, you'd watch Star Wars in the afternoon or E.T. that lasts for like 3 hours. And you're like, I want to finish watching that, but you can't.
You know which film I used to feel like I watched all the time, but it was always on the Saturday afternoon. It felt like Flight of the Navigator.
Oh, it was always on. That's why. It was. You can't find it anywhere now, but it was always on.
And you know what film I always see now, but I felt like I only watched it once when I was a kid. But every time I turn on the TV or something, there's some nostalgic 80s film. It's always War Games, with Matthew Broderick.
Yeah.
Pardo, there's actually been some breaking news since we've been we've been chatting. So Ron Rivera has been. We were just gonna do the who's getting fired in the morning, and Ron Rivera has been fired. So
sure.
the Panthers head coach, and actually the Panthers had a game. The game this week is against the Falcons, away at the Falcons.
Oh, the Falcons.
Yeah, the Falcons. So actually, kind of winnable game, I guess. But that's an anyone's game fixture. But yeah, that looks like the writing was on the wall for a while there. The new owner came in a couple of seasons ago, was overseeing things, giving things a chance.
They're quite ambitious, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So, but I was listening to a lot of podcasts saying that Ron Rivera is one of the better coaches in the NFL.
How many games are left actually? Because they're not out of it, are they? They can go. They could potentially be a wild card, couldn't they?
Yeah, they're 5-7.
Because the Eagles are second in theirs, and they're 5-7. I mean,
Yeah,
we've got the Seahawks, 49ers that, Seahawks are now ahead of the 49ers. Vikings are good as well. So, yeah, I mean.
But in the playoff standings, they're quite far down, right? So they're just above the Lions in playoff standing. So they're basically the 6 teams that are kind of in the playoff chase so far are the Saints, Seahawks, Packers, Cowboys, 49ers, Vikings. And then you've got like outside are the Rams, Bears, Bucks, Eagles, Panthers. So I guess it's just they've kind of don't. Well, maybe they could still make it, right? But I guess they just don't believe. Maybe they even think
Oh yeah, because
firing him might give them a bounce. Maybe they have a shot. But I think they're planning for next year now, right?
yeah, it must be, yeah. But who knows? Yeah, but that's the thing, when I was putting my list of one together, obviously, Panthers weren't the worst, and I've
No.
not disliked them when I've been watching them this year. But yeah, maybe is it McCaffrey that they've got?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. He's great.
he's fantastic, isn't he?
But I reckon the guy's just doing wholesale changes, and he doesn't think he's the person to lead them forward. So he's thought, let's go, let's just change everything. So we may as well move into this segment. Who's getting fired in the morning? So which teams do you think are going to part ways with or deserve to part ways with their coaches? Who's been just terrible to watch, and you don't think that they?
For me, I think the biggest disappointment is knowing that the Giants aren't very good anymore. Coming into this, I'd banked that the Giants would be, one of the strongest teams. Well, I'd say heart-wrenching, but that's probably a bit too strong. But certainly a disappointment that, they're just not challenging. I mean, I say the Giants ahead of the Jets, and they got beat by the Bengals. And maybe I should say the Bengals, but Bengals are coming back off a win. Who knows? And I think they might have had a strategy to kind of bomb, but I don't think that's been the strategy for the Giants.
Yeah,
until
I
recently.
think it's a great shout, and Pat Shermer will definitely be gone. I think he's the head coach there, but it's just like you say, it's so disappointing. I remember when I was in university watching or maybe it was after university, but I remember the Giants winning the two Super Bowls, and they've always been, even when we were young, right, a force to be reckoned with. They call them the football giants and everything, but it's been very, 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 very bad. And even Daniel Jones seems to have regressed this year, not got better. It's not looking great. There doesn't seem to be a lot of good stuff going on there. Any other teams?
Well, because that was the last. You only asked for one for bad
Yeah,
teams.
no, I think that's a good one.
So I just came back with that one. Have Eagles already sacked their coach? Because Eagles are a bit. I mean, if Giants beat the Eagles, then their guy's going to go as well.
It would be tough for the Eagles, I think, to sack Doug Peterson because he won the Super Bowl a couple of seasons ago. But I do think that Frank Reich, who is the Colts coach, even though the Colts aren't doing so well now, I do think that Frank Reich might have been the secret sauce there to actually to win the Super Bowl. And I think they are in disarray. But I do think that they would probably stick with him another season. If they miss the playoffs this season, then I think they would still, because he won the Super Bowl so recently, I think they'd have to give him another chance, right? And if he can't bring it back around, then they probably would separate. But yeah, I think he's safe. Let's move on to your other new segment, Pardo's Power Rankings. Block out the noise. It's Novice Pardo's Power Ranking.
So,
and then you need to put them on your Twitter as well. You need to publish them and say, these are my power rankings. Come at me, bro. That's what you need to say.
I'll put my own hashtag. I'll make my own hashtag, but yeah, I'll include "come at me, bro" as well. So like Ravens would be my number one for obvious reasons. The form team at the moment, they're strong all over the field, and first week coming into it, Lamar Jackson stood out straight away. I think they're playing the 49ers that week as well, and don't know how that happened, but it was a no-brainer for them. So they remain number one. Number two, Seahawks. They've been very strong these last few weeks. They kind of almost come out of nowhere. We didn't talk about them much at all when I first started with the pod, and I think it pays dividends when you're going and you're looking at any matchup against the Seahawks. I'm going straight Seahawks. Number three. All right, they're coming off a loss, 49ers. Very close game against the Ravens. Could have gone either way, and it just so happened to have the rub of the green for the Ravens. I think the Ravens were the home team. Not sure. I think they were. And that's what kind of swung it with predictions as well. You had a gentleman's agreement for the 49ers, is that right?
That's right.
So, yeah, make sure that's remembered on predictions results. And so fourth and fifth. So this is where it kind of gets tricky. And I didn't even mention Patriots, but they're kind of an honourable mention, but probably a bit boring to even mention the Patriots, I suppose. They're kind of there as a matter of course, but not an interesting team, not one I look out for from my own perspective. But yeah, come at me.
Bro.
Bro. So I suppose number 4 would be Bills. And this is, I suppose,
Wow.
so I like the Bills, always, held strong. And I think they had a bit of a slip up midway through kind of pod season. So when I first entered the pod, they were there, and a bit of a outsider team. Your recommendation for one that might make it certainly to the playoffs, but maybe even outsider for the Super Bowl. And they remain in contention, which is great. And I think this weekend as well, if they can get results against the Ravens, then who knows where. And they got a very good result against the Cowboys, and at the Cowboys just last week. So got to be in there. And I'm, considering how much I wore a Buffalo Bills top back in the 90s.
A lot. Almost every weekend, I think. I saw that Bills top.
Yeah. Or just shows my lack of wardrobe during the 90s. But either way, there we go. And number 5, we got the Saints creeping in there.
Very good. Very good.
They're a very classy team, the Saints. I don't think there's too much said about them, but everyone kind of talks about them. They just quietly get about their business. Classy team, Saints.
Nice.
And it pays dividends that for this week, Saints against 49ers, we've already had the gentleman's agreement that I will have the Saints, you have the 49ers, and let's see. And, these little fixtures coming up this weekend will certainly have an impact on this power ranking next week. It could be completely reworked. But yeah, other honourable mentions, Packers, Vikings. You think about favourable teams, these are the teams that would go in my list if I had to make a decision on team to follow. But at the end of the day, I quite liked. Actually, I've loved backing the Lions these few weeks, and they'll always be there. But it'll be interesting to kind of follow it from a power ranking point of view going forward.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're an NFL savant nowadays. I mean, I think that was probably the best power ranking I've heard out of anyone. You are no longer a novice. I think we can definitely take that novice away from you, those training wheels off. Excellent power ranking. I can only applaud. Following on from your power rankings, who is your tip for the Super Bowl? Do you already have one, or because I got a bit excited about the Seahawks because I do think, but like you said, we haven't talked about the Seahawks a lot, and actually, Russell Wilson is looking very good. This combination of Russell Wilson to DK Metcalf is looking good. The whole team seems to be a real team. Like I heard some podcasts like just behind the scenes and listening to some coaches talking, and the way that they talk about the culture and the way they do things, it seems that people really love being there as part of the organization, and they love their jobs. They really have a good team spirit. So I don't know, like the way they're playing, they seem to be able to beat the best teams as well.
It's a great little place, actually, Seattle.
Yes.
And if travel did come back, I think that would be where we'd go next. Just because it is kind of a little area, it's in a little pocket in upper west coast of
Yeah.
the US, and yeah, it'd be nice to go there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we've got enough content there. I think we can.
Yeah. But yeah, that's fine. Not too bad. Okay. Yeah. All right. Didn't get to talk about my run.
Oh yeah, you can say now. Or I can do this over the outro.
Well, there's
Tell
not
us
much to
about your run.
say. I mean, I just did a run on Sunday. Did 10K. Got a new haircut.